The false notions of men of low, undeveloped nature, both with regard to what is good and what the power requires of them, are such that they cannot but fear, and devotion is lost in the sacrifices of ingratiation. God takes them where they are, accepts whatever they honestly offer, and so helps them to outgrow themselves, preparing them to offer the true offering, and to know him whom they ignorantly worship. He will not abolish their fear, except with the truth of his own being. Till they apprehend that, and in order that they may come to apprehend it, he receives their sacrifices of blood, the invention of their sore need, only influencing for the time the modes of them. He will destroy the lie that is not all a lie, only by the truth, which is all true. Although he loves them utterly, he does not tell them there is nothing in him to make them afraid. That would be to drive them from him forever. While they are such as they are, there is much in him that cannot but affright them. They do well to fear him. It is, while they remain what they are, the only true relation between them. To remove that fear from their hearts, save by letting them know his love with its purifying fire, a love which for ages, it may be, they cannot know, would be to give them up utterly to the power of evil. Persuade men that fear is a vile thing, that it is an insult to God, that he will none of it, while yet they are in love with their own will, and slaves to every movement of their passionate impulse. And what will the consequence be? That they will insult God as a discarded idol, a superstition, a falsehood, as a thing under whose evil influence they have too long groaned, a thing to be cast out and spit upon. After that, how much will they learn of him? Nor would it be long ere the old fear would return, with this difference perhaps, that instead of trembling before a live energy, they would tremble before powers which formerly they regarded as inanimate, and have now endowed with souls after the imagination of their fears. Then would spiritual chaos with all its monsters become again. God being what he is, a God who loves righteousness, a God who, rather than do an unfair thing, would lay down his Godhead and assert himself in ceasing to be, a God who, that his creatures might not die of ignorance, died as much as a God could die, and that is divinely more than man can die, to give him himself. Such a God, I say, may well look fearful from afar to the creature who recognizes in himself no imperative good, who fears only suffering, and has no aspiration, only wretched ambition. But in proportion as such a creature comes nearer, grows towards him, in and for whose likeness he was begun, in proportion, that is, as the eternal right begins to disclose itself to him, in proportion as he becomes capable of the idea that his kind belongs to him as he could never belong to himself, approaches the capacity of seeing and understanding that his individuality can be perfected only in the love of his neighbor, and that his being can find its end only in oneness with the source from which it came. In proportion, I do not say as he sees these things, but as he nears the possibility of seeing them, will the terror at the God of his life abate. Though far indeed from surmising the bliss that awaits him, he is drawing more nigh to the goal of his nature, the central secret joy of sonship to a God who loves righteousness and hates iniquity, does nothing he would not permit in his creature, demands nothing of his creature he would not do himself. The fire of God, which is his essential being, his love, his creative power, is a fire unlike its earthly symbol in this, that it is only at a distance it burns, that the further from him it burns the worse, and that when we turn and begin to approach him, the burning begins to change to comfort, which comfort will grow to such bliss that the heart at length cries out with a gladness no other gladness can reach, "Whom have I in heaven but thee? And there is none upon earth that I desire besides thee." The glory of being, the essence of life and its joy, shining upon the corrupt and deathly, must needs, like the sun, consume the dead, and send corruption down to the dust. That which it burns in the soul is not of the soul, yea, is at utter variance with it. Yet so close to the soul is the foul fungus growth sprung from it and subsisting upon it, that the burning of it is felt through every spiritual nerve. When the evil parasites are consumed away, that is when the man yields his self and all that self's low world, and returns to his Lord and God. Then that which, before, he was aware of only as burning, he will feel as love, comfort, strength, and eternal, ever-growing life in him. For now he lives, and life cannot hurt life. It can only hurt death, which needs and ought to be destroyed. God is life essential, eternal, and death cannot live in his sight. For death is corruption, and has no existence in itself, living only in the decay of the things of life. If then any child of the Father finds that he is afraid before him, that the thought of God is a discomfort to him, or even a terror, let him make haste. Let him not linger to put on any garment, but rush at once in his nakedness, a true child, for shelter from his own evil and God's terror, into the salvation of the Father's arms, the home whence he was sent, that he might learn that it was a home. What father, being evil, would it not win to see the child with whom he was vexed running to his embrace? How much more will not the Father of our spirits, who seeks nothing but his children themselves, receive him with open arms? Self, accepted as the law of self, is the one demon enemy of life. God is the only Savior from it, and from all that is not God. For God is life, and all that is not God is death. Life is the destruction of death, of all that kills, of all that is of death's kind.